Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. McDonnell Douglas F-15E Strike Eagle. The McDonnell Douglas F-15E Strike Eagle is an American all-weather multi-role strike fighter, derived from the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle. The F-15E was designed in the 1980s for long-range, high-speed interdiction without relying on escort or electronic warfare aircraft. United States Air Force F-15E Strike Eagles can be distinguished from other U.S. Eagle variants by darker aircraft camouflage and conformal fuel tanks mounted along the engine intake ramps. The Strike Eagle has been deployed for military operations in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and Libya, among others. During these operations, the F-15E has carried out jeep strikes against high-value targets, combat air patrols, and provided close air support for coalition troops. It has also been exported to several countries. Origins. The McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle had been introduced by the United States Air Force as a replacement for its fleet of McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom IIs. However, unlike the F-4, the F-15 was designed for the air superiority mission with little consideration for a ground attack role. The F-15 Special Project Office opposed the idea of F-15s performing the interdiction mission, giving rise to the phrase, "not a pound for air-to-ground" in service. The F-15 has been a very successful fighter, with over 100 aerial combat victories and 0 losses in air-to-air combat as of 2007. Despite a lack of official interest, McDonnell Douglas quietly worked on an F-15 derived interdictor fighter. The company envisaged the aircraft as a replacement for the General Dynamics F-111 and the remaining F-4s, as well as to augment the existing F-15s. In 1978, the USAF initiated the Tactical All-Weather Requirement Study, which looked at McDonnell Douglas' proposal and other options such as the purchase of further F-111Fs. TAWRS recommended the F-15E as the USAF's future strike platform. In 1979, McDonnell Douglas and Hughes began a close collaboration on the development of the F-15's air-to-ground capabilities. To assist in the F-15's development, McDonnell Douglas modified the second TF-15A prototype, AF serial number 710291. As a demonstrator, the aircraft, known as the Advanced Fighter Capability Demonstrator, first flew on 8 July 1980. It was previously used to trial conformal fuel tanks, initially designed for the F-15 under the designation Fast Pack, with fast standing for fuel and sensor tactical. It was subsequently fitted with a PAV-TAC laser designator targeting pod to allow the independent delivery of guided bombs. The demonstrator was displayed at the 1980 Farnborough Air Show. Enhanced Tactical Fighter. In March 1981, the USAF announced the Enhanced Tactical Fighter program to procure a replacement for the F-111. The program was later renamed the Dual-Role Fighter Competition. The concept envisioned an aircraft capable of launching deep air interdiction missions without requiring additional support by fighter escort or jamming. General Dynamics submitted the F-16XL, while McDonnell Douglas submitted the F-15E. The Panavia Tornado was also a candidate, but since the aircraft lacked a credible air superiority fighter capability, coupled with the fact that it is not American-made, it was not seriously considered. The DRF evaluation team, under the direction of Brigadier General Ronald W. Yates, ran from 1981 through 30 April 1983, during which the F-15E logged more than 200 flights, demonstrated takeoff weight of more than, and validated 16 different weapons-carrying configurations. McDonnell Douglas, to assist 710291 in the evaluation, added to the program other F-15s, designated 780468, 800055, and 810063. The single-engine F-16XL was a promising design which, with its radically redesigned cranked delta wing, greatly boosted performance, if selected. The single- and two-seat versions were to be designated F-16E and F-16F, respectively. On 24 February 1984, the USAF chose the F-15E. Key factors in the decision were the F-15's lower development costs compared to the F-16XL, a belief that the F-15E had future growth potential, and possessing twin-engine redundancy. The USAF was initially expected to procure 400 aircraft, a figure later revised to 392. Construction of the first three F-15s started in July 1985. The first of these, 860183, made its maiden flight on the 11th of December 1986. Piloted by Gary Jennings, the aircraft reached a maximum speed of Mach 0.9 and an altitude of 40,000 feet. During the 75-minute flight, this aircraft had the full F-15E avionics suite, and the redesigned front fuselage but not the aft fuselage and the common engine bay. The latter was featured on 860184, while 860185 incorporated all the changes of the F-15E from the F-15. On 31 March 1987, the first officially completed F-15E made its first flight. The first production F-15E was delivered to the 405th Tactical Training Wing, Nuke Air Force Base, Arizona in April 1988. Production continued into the 2000s with 236 produced for the USAF through 2001. Upgrade programs and replacement. The F-15E will be upgraded with the Raytheon APG-82 active electronically scanned array radar after 2007, and the first test radar was delivered to Boeing in 2010. It combines the processor of the APG-79 used on the F/A-18E F Super Hornet, with the antenna of the APG-633A ESA being fitted on the F-15C. The new radar upgrade is to be part of the F-15E radar modernization program. The new radar was named APG-634 until it received the APG-82 designation in 2009. The RMP also includes a wideband radome, and improvements to the environment control and electronic warfare systems, having a sturdier airframe rated for twice the lifetime of earlier variants. The F-15E is expected to remain in service past 2025. The USAF's F-15E fleet had an average age of 21 years, and an average airframe flying time of 6,000 hours. In 2012, the Air Force was reportedly considering future options. There is no slated replacement for the F-15E. One choice is the F-35 Lightning II, set to replace other attack aircraft such as the F-16 Falcon and A-10 Thunderbolt II. A F-35E variant was studied. It would be complex, and thus expensive, to add a second seat to the F-35, especially to preserve its stealth profile. Providing for greater range and payload would also be difficult tasks. Alternatively, the role could be covered by a combination of fighter and bomber aircraft, such as the planned long-range strike bomber The F-15E may also be replaced by a clean-sheet sixth-generation aircraft design. Alasa. On 24 March 2014, Boeing won a $30.6 million contract from DARPA as part of the Airborne Launch Assist Space Access Program. The goal of the program is to cut the cost of putting microsatellites into orbit by 66% through advances in launch systems. Under the 11-month contract, Boeing will build 12 launch vehicles, each with a payload capability of up to. An Alasa vehicle is to be fitted under an F-15E, which will climb to 40,000 feet, then be released and fire its 4 engines to reach low Earth orbit. Awarding the contract to Boeing would make use of the F-15E as the carriage vehicle, as previous design contracts had been given to Lockheed Martin to use the F-22 Raptor, and Virgin Galactic to use their Spaceship Two aircraft. DARPA had previously insisted they wanted to select an aircraft they would not need to modify heavily to carry and launch the Alasa payload. Design. The F-15's deep strike mission is a radical departure from the original intent of the F-15. Since the F-15 was designed as an air superiority fighter under the mantra, "not a pound," for air-to-ground, the basic airframe, however, proved versatile enough to produce a very capable strike fighter. The F-15E, while designed for ground attack, retains the air-to-air lethality of the F-15, and can defend itself against enemy aircraft. The F-15E prototype was a modification of the two-seat F-15B. The F-15E, despite its origins, includes significant structural changes and much more powerful engines. The aft fuselage was designed to incorporate the more powerful engines, with advanced engine bay structures and doors. The advanced structures utilized superplastic forming and diffusion bonding technologies. The back seat is equipped for a weapon systems officer to work the new air-to-ground avionics. The WSO uses multiple screens to display information from the radar, electronic warfare, or thermographic cameras, monitor aircraft or weapons status and possible threats, select targets, and use an electronic moving map to navigate. Two-hand controls are used to select new displays and to refine targeting information. Displays can be moved from one screen to another, chosen from a menu of display options. Unlike earlier two-place jets, whose back seat lacked flying controls, the back seat of the F-15E cockpit is equipped with its own stick and throttle so the WSO can take over flying, albeit with reduced visibility. To extend its range, the F-15E is fitted with 2 conformal fuel tanks that hug the fuselage. These produce lower drag than conventional underwing, underbelly drop tanks. They carry 750 US gallons of fuel, and house 6 weapons hardpoints in 2 rows of 3 in tandem. Unlike conventional drop tanks, CFTs cannot be jettisoned, thus the increased range is offset by the degraded performance from the increased drag and weight compared to a clean configuration. Similar tanks can be mounted on the F-15C, D and export variants, and the Israeli Air Force makes use of this option on their fighter variant F-15s as well as their F-15I variant of the Strike Eagle, but the F-15E is the only U.S. variant to be routinely fitted with CFDs. The Strike Eagle's tactical electronic warfare system integrates all countermeasures on the craft. Radar warning receivers, radar jammer, radar, and chaff flare dispensers are all tied to the TUs to provide comprehensive defense against detection and tracking. This system includes an externally mounted ALQ-131 ECM pod which is carried on the centerline pylon. When required, the APG-70 radar system allows air crews to detect ground targets from longer ranges. One feature of this system is that after a sweep of a target area, the crew freezes the air-to-ground map, then goes back into air-to-air mode to clear for air threats. During the air-to-surface weapon delivery, the pilot is capable of detecting, targeting and engaging air-to-air targets while the WSO designates the ground target. The APG-70 is to be replaced by the AN, a PG-821 active electronically scanned array radar, which will begin flight tests in January 2010, with initial operational capability expected in 2014. Its inertial navigation system uses a laser gyroscope to continuously monitor the aircraft's position and provide information to the central computer and other systems, including a digital moving map in both cockpits. The low-altitude navigation and targeting infrared for night system is mounted externally under the engine intakes. It allows the aircraft to fly at low altitudes, at night and in any weather conditions, to attack ground targets with a variety of precision-guided and unguided weapons. The LANTIRN system gives the F-15E exceptional accuracy in weapons delivery day and night, and in poor weather, and consists of two pods attached to the exterior of the aircraft. At night, the video picture from the LANTIRN can be projected on the HUD, producing an infrared image of the ground. The navigation pod contains a terrain-following radar which allows the pilot to safely fly at a very low altitude following cues displayed on a heads-up display. This system also can be coupled to the aircraft's autopilot to provide hands-off terrain-following capability. Additionally, the pod contains a forward-looking infrared system which is projected on the pilot's HUD, which is used during nighttime and low-visibility operations. The AN AAQ-13 nav pod is installed beneath the right engine intake. The targeting pod contains a laser designator and a tracking system that mark an enemy for destruction as far away as 10 miles. Once tracking has been started, targeting information is automatically handed off to infrared homing air-to-surface missiles or laser-guided bombs. The targeting pod is mounted beneath the left engine intake. Configurations may be either the AN AAQ-14 target pod, AN AAQ-28 LITENING target pod, or the AN AAQ-33 Sniper Advanced Targeting Pod. The F-15E carries most air-to-ground weapons in the USAF inventory. It is also armed with AIM-9 Sidewinders and AIM-120 ARIAMs. Since the Strike Eagle retains the counter-air capabilities from its Eagle lineage, it is regularly trained for counter-air missions, and fully capable for offensive counter-air, like the F-15C. The Strike Eagle also carries an internally mounted General Electric M61A 120mm cannon with 650 rounds, which is effective against enemy aircraft and soft ground targets. The Mid-Fighter Data Link Terminal, produced by BAE Systems, improves situational awareness and communications capabilities via the Link 16 data link. Since 2004, South Korean firm Lignex-1 has been manufacturing the F-15's head-up display. A total number of 150 HUDs were delivered by 2011. Lignex-1 had been a participant in the F-15K program as a subcontractor to Rockwell Collins. Lignex-1 is also preparing to manufacture F-15's new multifunction display and flight control computer. Also since 2004, Korea Aerospace Industries has produced the wings and forward fuselages of the F-15. In 2008, Kai established another production line for Singapore's F-15SG. Kai is involved in the development and manufacture of the conformal weapons bay to be used on the F-15 Silent Eagle. The engines used for the first batches of F-15E Strike Eagle and its variants are Pratt & Whitney F-100 PW220. Later batches featured the more powerful P&W F-100 PW229 engines. The export version for Saudi Arabia and Israel uses P&W F-100 229 engines. In 2008, Saudi Arabia decided to re-engine their F-15S fleet aircraft with General Electric F-110 GE-129 engines. Their F-15SA fleet will also be powered by GE F-110 engines. The South Korean F-15K came with two different in-engine variants. The first batch are powered by GE F-110 engines, while the second batch are powered by P&W F-100 engines. The Singapore Air Force equipped their F-15SG fleet with GE F-110 engines. United States. The F-15E reached initial operational capability on 30 September 1989 at Seymour Johnson Air Force Base in North Carolina with the 4th Tactical Fighter Wing, 336th Tactical Fighter Squadron. Operations Desert Shield and Desert Storm. The F-15E was deployed in response to Iraq's invasion of Kuwait in August 1990. For Operation Desert Shield, the 336th Tactical Fighter Squadron flew to Seba Air Base in Oman to begin training exercises in anticipation of an Iraqi attack on Saudi Arabia in December. The 335th and 336th Squadrons relocated to Al-Khaj Air Base in Saudi Arabia, closer to Iraq's border. At the start of Operation Desert Storm, 24 F-15s launched an attack on 5 fixed Scud installations in western Iraq on 17 January 1991. Missions against Scud sites continued through that night with a second strike of 21 F-15s. At nighttime, F-15s flew hunter missions over western Iraq, searching for mobile Scud launches. By conducting random bombings in suspected areas, it was hoped to deter the Iraqis from setting up for a Scud launch. On the opening night of the war, an F-15E fired a AIM-9 Sidewinder at a MiG-29, which failed to hit its target. Other F-15s simultaneously and unsuccessfully engaged the lone MiG-29, which was eventually brought down by a missile of unknown source. On the 18th of January, during a strike against a petrol oil and lubricant plant near Basra, an F-15E was lost to enemy fire. The pilot and WSO were killed. F-15E crews described this mission as the most difficult and dangerous of the war as it was heavily defended by SAR-3s, SAR-6s, SAR-8s and Rolands as well as by anti-aircraft artillery. 2 nights later, a second and final F-15E was downed by an Iraqi SAR-2. The crew survived and evaded capture for several days and made in contact with coalition aircraft, but rescue was not launched due to security issues. One airman failed to identify himself with proper codes. The 2 airmen were later captured by the Iraqis. F-15s were able to destroy 18 Iraqi jets on the ground at Al Air Base using GBU-12s and CBU-87s. On 14 February, an F-15E scored its only air-to-air kill of the war, a Mi-24 helicopter, while responding to a request for help by U.S. Special Forces. 5 Iraqi helicopters were spotted. The lead F-15E of 2 acquired a helicopter via its FLIR in the process of unloading Iraqi soldiers. and released a GBU-10 bomb. The F-15E crew thought the bomb had missed its target, and were preparing to use a sidewinder when the helicopter was destroyed. The Special Forces team estimated that the Hind was roughly over the ground when the bomb hit its target. As coalition bombing operation had commenced, the F-15S disengaged from combat with the remaining helicopters. F-15S attacked various heavily defended targets throughout Iraq, prioritizing Scud missile sites missions with the objective of killing Iraqi President Saddam Hussein were undertaken, with several suspected locations bombed by F-15S. Prior to the operation's ground war phase, F-15S conducted tank plinking missions against Iraqi vehicles in Kuwait. Following 42 days of heavy combat, a ceasefire came into effect on 1 March 1991, leading to the establishment of northern and southern no-fly zones over Iraq. Operations Southern Watch and Northern Watch. Following Desert Storm, 2 no-fly zones over Iraq were set up, and enforced typically by US and UK aircraft. In one incident, an attack on up to 600 Kurdish refugees by Iraqi helicopters at Chamchamal, northern Iraq, was observed by a flight of F-15S. As they were not allowed to open fire, the F-15S instead conducted several high-speed passes as close as possible to the Iraqi helicopters to create severe wake turbulence, while aiming lasers at the helicopters' cockpits to attempt to blind their crews. This caused the crash of one Hind. Afterwards, USAF leadership ordered F-15S not to fly below to deter a repetition. F-15S of the 391st Fighter Squadron, 492d Fighter Squadron, and 494th Fighter Squadron regularly deployed to Turkey throughout the 1990s. In January 1993, Iraqi targets in breach of the ceasefire agreement below the 32nd parallel north were attacked. 10 F-15S conducted a punitive strike days later. Most missions were of a defensive nature. The Strike Eagles carried a flexible range of weapons on a typical mission. AWACS aircraft were in close contact with F-15E crews, who would receive new taskings while airborne, and thus could fly unplanned attacks on Iraqi targets. After 1993, violations of the no-fly zones were minimal as Iraq staged a minor withdrawal. In 1997, Turkey approved the creation of Operation Northern Watch and permitted U.S. forces to use the Incirlik Air Base. In December 1998, Operation Desert Fox was conducted, when Iraq refused UNSCOM inspections. On 28 December 1998, 3 F-15S each dropped 2 GBU 12,500-pound precision-guided munitions to successfully strike and SAR-3 tracking radar and optical guidance unit. After Desert Fox, Iraq stepped up its violations of the no-fly zones, thus a number of retaliatory and pre-planned strikes were conducted by F-15S. In ONW alone, weapons were expended on at least 105 days. Between 24 and 26 January 1999, F-15S expended several AGM-130s and GBU-12s against SAM sites in northern Iraq near Mosul. Several F-15S also flew in support of Operation Provide Comfort and Operation Provide Comfort II. Operations in the Balkans. Operation Deny Flight was a United Nations enforced no-fly zone over Bosnia and Herzegovina due to the deteriorating situation in the Balkans. In August 1993, F-15S from 492d and 494th FS deployed to Aviano, Italy. In late 1993, NATO ordered a limited F-15E strike at Udbina airfield, targeting Serbian forces in neighboring Croatia. 8 F-15s armed with GBU-12s took off to attack an SAR-6 anti-aircraft vehicle. The mission was cancelled mid-flight over the application of stringent rules of engagement. In December 1993, F-15s launched to destroy a pair of SAR-2 sites which had fired upon 2 Royal Navy Sea Harrier FRS-1s. In August 1995, F-15s of 90th Fighter Squadron joined the 2 other squadrons, the 492d and 494th, flew over 2,500 sorties since deny flight had begun. 2,000 of these were by 492d. In August 1995, in support of NATO's Operation Deliberate Force, F-15s flew strike missions against Serbian armor and logistics around the Bosnian capital, Sarajevo. On 9 September, an F-15E deployed the first GBU-15 bomb for the type. A total of 9 were dropped against Bosnian Serb ground forces and air defense targets around Banja Luka, in response to the displacement of Kosovars and the Serbian government's rejection of a NATO ultimatum. Operation Allied Force was launched in March 1999. A total of 26 F-15s flew the first strikes of Allied force against Serb surface-to-air missile sites, anti-aircraft batteries and early warning radar stations. Strike Eagles were deployed to Aviano as well as Rough Lake and Heath in the UK. In theatre, F-15s conducted close air support missions, a new idea in the late 1990s which has since become a popular concept within the USAF. Missions typically lasted around 7.5 hours. Included 2 aerial refuelings. F-15s would carry a mix of air-to-air and air-to-ground munitions to perform both combat air patrol duties as well as strike missions in the same mission. Mobile SAM launchers posed a considerable threat to NATO aircraft and had made successful shootdowns, most notably of a Lockheed F-117 Nighthawk. In order to strike from increased distances, the F-15E was equipped with the AGM-130, which provided a standoff strike capability. Thank you for watching. Brought to you by WikiVidi Documentaries. Please like and subscribe below. Please like and subscribe below.